want to talk about this brilliant book. So, for anyone watching on YouTube, this is Life is Short and So Am I. Your book that you wrote with Ross Owen Williams and Ian Douglas.
Yeah,
So
man.
the book came out a few years ago, but it's been on my pile and I finally got around to reading it. And I put something out on my socials recently because I read a lot of wrestling books, probably far too many that is healthy. But this is one of my absolute favorites. And I said this when we caught up in Philly. The reason that I loved it so much is because actually, as much as all the behind the scenes stuff about wrestling or even under the ring stuff in wrestling in your case, what really jumps out about this book is I think at heart it's a love letter of a dad to his son, really, and also talking a lot about your relationship with your own dad.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write a book, I guess, is the first question.
So it's something that was always on my bucket list. Always like, hey, I could do this, but pushed it off and pushed it off and pushed it off. And then I got released by WWE, and I was like, man, probably can't do this anymore. I got no one to like back it, kind of thing. And then Ian Douglas reached out to me about it, and we wrote the first draft, and then Rosso and Williams wrote the second draft, and it was just a thing where I knew I had a story to tell, but I just didn't know how to tell it, and I just didn't know. I'm not good with words. I'm not good with writing things. So to have someone write it for me, um, and write it so magnificently as they did, man, it really really turned out great. It's project wise, self project wise, is what I'm most happy about and most proud of for what we put out. I said, guys, I don't want this to be a wrestling book. I don't want it to be a dad book. I don't want it to be a little person book. I don't want it to be a kid from Oshkosh book. I want everything. I literally want every aspect of my life. So a wrestling fan can read it, but then they can go, hey, this is really, really cool for, I know a family with a little person in their family. They give it to them. And they just, it's stuff like that where I don't want it to be so one solid like group, and I don't want it. I'd never wanted that, and I'm very very happy with it. And it was like therapy, man. I remember doing those interviews and those over the phone for the book, and there were some hard parts, man. And then doing the audiobook was when it really hit me. But the audiobook uh was such a full a form of therapy, self therapy, and like freeness. Like talking about my mom and talking about her issues, and then talking about my grandpa, and it was like, man, that was so emotional and so freeing. I remember talking about my grandpa, and I just broke down. I completely broke down. And the lady recording it, for the audiobook, was like, "Hey, do you want to stop for the day? Do you want to take a break?" And I said, "Nope, let's go. Let's keep going." And it was just awesome, and it made me feel like I remember walking out of the studio that day because it was one of the final chapters. I walked out of the studio that day, and I was like, "Man, I felt like I've never felt before, like a weight lifted off or something. I just felt like I was okay with stuff that happened in the past, and moving forward." And it was just, I'm so proud of that damn book.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of it. And I always laugh about it. I was like, man, my son can do a book report without ever reading a book if he really, really wants to later in life, and just do it like he knows everything in that damn thing, and he hasn't probably read any of it because I just talked about it all. Uh,
Uh,
and there's
well,
there's 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 parts in there I had to edit, and I wanted to edit. And my dad said, he goes, when I got released in 2016, my dad he's always been my absolute hero, but he said, Dylan, do not talk negative about WWE. He goes, I said, he goes, I'm sure you're upset. I'm sure you're heartbroken, all of this. He goes, but sit back and realize you lived your dream for 10 years. Something that you never thought would happen. Something that no one ever thought would happen. He goes, why is there any way to talk negative about that? And about something, and it stuck with me, and it sticks with me to this day, where it's like they gave me an opportunity I really shouldn't have had for 10 years of my life. The one thing I wanted to do since I was 4 years old, they gave me. Whether I was, working with DX, or as Vince's legitimate son, or I was sitting at home with creative nothing for me, I was still getting a paycheck.
Mm.
And I was still able to provide for myself and my family and my household. I can't be mad at that. I can't.